My great-grandfather left Ireland with nothing but faith and a desire for freedom. He came to a nation that demanded something from him, not comfort, not ease, but the courage to build something greater than himself. He understood what we have forgotten, that democracy is not a gift that, once given, takes care of itself. It is a living thing that must be tended, defended, and renewed in each generation. I have watched what happens when we forget this truth. I have seen the cost of our complacency, and tonight, I must tell you with absolute conviction, the corruption that destroys democracies does not announce itself with fanfare. It creeps in quietly, in the gap between what we know to be true and what we're willing to do about it. Now, I know what you might be thinking. You hear the word corruption, and you imagine smoke-filled rooms, bribes exchanged in dark corners, politicians selling out their principles for money or power. And yes, those things exist. They are real. But they are not what I'm here to talk about tonight. What I want to share with you is far more dangerous, far more insidious, and far more personal than any scandal you'll read about in tomorrow's newspapers. By the end of our time together, you will understand something that changes everything. Corruption is not merely what happens in distant halls of power. It is what happens in your own heart when you know the right action but choose the easy one, when you see the truth but speak the comfortable lie, when your country needs you but you decide comfort comes first. This is the corruption I want to talk about. And I'm going to be very direct with you, because you deserve nothing less than the truth. I know your struggles. I know them because I've lived them, because I've talked with thousands of people just like you, and because these struggles are timeless. They repeat in every generation. You see problems in your community, in your nation, in your world, and you feel powerless to change them. You look at the scale of what's wrong and you think, what can one person possibly do? You're exhausted by dishonesty in leadership, and you've started to believe that maybe all politics is just corrupt, that maybe it's always been this way and always will be. You want to be a person of integrity, but the cost of standing alone feels too high. Your friends might think you're difficult. Your family might not understand. Your coworkers might avoid you. And you're disgusted by those who put party over principle, who care more about winning than being right, but you're not sure what you can actually do about it. You feel the weight of responsibility, that sense that you should be doing something, but you don't know where to begin. Let me be clear about what I'm offering you tonight. I'm not going to give you easy answers. I will not insult your intelligence with simple solutions or pretend that everything will be fine if you just follow 5 easy steps. What I'm going to show you is harder than that, but it's also more real, more powerful, and more essential than any quick fix could ever be. I'm going to show you the truth that sustained this nation through its darkest hours. The truth that democracy survives or falls based on the daily choices of ordinary citizens. That the corruption we must fight first is not in Washington or on Wall Street, but in our own willingness to demand hard truths instead of comfortable lies. Now, what makes what I'm about to tell you different from everything else you've heard? Most people speak of corruption as something they do. Politicians, corporations, the powerful elite. They talk about it as if it's something that happens somewhere else, to someone else, by someone else. But I learned from watching nations fall and democracies fail that this is itself a comfortable lie. The corruption that destroys free societies is the corruption of citizens who have the power to choose their leaders, who are warned of danger, who see the facts clearly, and who choose to look away. It's the corruption of good people who want freedom but don't want to pay its price, who want democracy's benefits but not its responsibilities. Here's the contrast I want you to see clearly. Instead of living in frustration and cynicism, believing you're powerless while the corrupt prosper, you're going to understand that you hold the ultimate power in a democracy. Not the power of one grand gesture, not the power to fix everything overnight, but the power of daily choice, honest assessment, and moral courage. You're going to learn to recognize corruption in its most dangerous form, not as scandal, but as the quiet erosion of our willingness to face unpleasant facts and act upon them. This is not theory. This is what I witnessed firsthand when I studied the fall of great democracies. This is what history teaches with terrible clarity, and this is what will determine whether the democratic experiment continues or fails in your time. So let me take you back to a specific moment in history, because I learned more from studying this period than from almost anything else. Let me take you to Britain in the 1930s. Picture a great democracy, the mother of parliaments, a people who had fought for centuries for their freedom, who had stood against tyranny time and time again, who believed deeply in liberty, in fairness, in the rule of law. These were not weak people. These were not foolish people. They were people very much like you and me, and they faced a choice. Their leaders stood before them, not all of them, but enough, and said, there is danger coming. Germany is rearming. The facts are clear. We must prepare. We must sacrifice now to prevent catastrophe later. Winston Churchill warned them. He stood in Parliament and pointed to the evidence. He calculated the numbers. He showed them exactly what was happening across the Channel. He begged them to face reality, and he was not alone. There were others who saw what was coming and tried to sound the alarm. And how did the democracy respond? They voted for the man who promised them they could stay comfortable. They elected leaders who told them what they wanted to hear rather than what they needed to know. Not because they were stupid, they weren't. Not because they lacked information, they had it. The facts were available, the warnings were clear, but facing the truth required sacrifice. It required higher taxes. It required disrupting their comfortable routines. It required preparing for a war they desperately hoped would never come. And sacrifice is uncomfortable. Now, I must tell you what happened next with appalling frankness, because this is where the lesson becomes real. Within 4 years, that choice nearly destroyed them. The bombs fell on London because free citizens, given accurate information and the power to choose, chose comfort over truth. They chose the pleasant lie over the hard fact. They chose to believe that somehow everything would work out, that the danger wasn't really as bad as the alarmists claimed, that surely reasonable people could work things out without all this talk of sacrifice and preparation. But here's what haunts me still, what keeps me awake at night even now. When disaster came, when the bombs were falling and the nation was fighting for its very survival, those same citizens turned to their leaders and said, "You failed us. You should have warned us. You should have prepared us. How could you let this happen?" And the leaders could only respond, "But we did warn you. We told you exactly what was coming. You had the power to turn us out of office if you disagreed with our policies. You had the vote. You had the information. You had every opportunity to choose a different path, and you chose otherwise." This is the corruption I'm speaking of tonight. Not bribery, not scandal, not some politician taking money under the table, but the corruption of a free people who refuse to bear the burden of their freedom. The corruption of citizens who want someone else to make the hard choices, who want to complain about their leaders but don't want to accept that they chose those leaders, who want democracy to work but don't want to do the work that democracy requires. Let me tell you about a different kind of corruption, one that begins with a single compromise, one that shows how this works in everyday life. There was a time when good men in Britain saw the need for civil defense, air raid precautions, shelters, warning systems, equipment, training. They knew, based on clear evidence, that war might come, and if it did, citizens would need protection. So they asked for volunteers, just volunteers, people willing to give their time to prepare for a danger that might never come. They weren't asking people to fight. They weren't asking people to die. They were just asking people to prepare, to learn, to be ready. They needed 1 million people. That's what the experts calculated. 1 million volunteers to adequately protect the civilian population. Do you know how many people volunteered? 200,000. Only 200,000. While Germany, facing the same potential danger, had 12 million people in comparable organizations. 12 million Germans preparing, 200,000 British preparing. Think about that difference. Think about what it means. Why? Why wouldn't people volunteer? Because to volunteer meant admitting the danger was real. It meant disrupting comfortable routines. It meant spending evenings learning first aid instead of relaxing at home. It meant facing the possibility of war instead of hoping it would somehow go away. It meant acting on a threat that felt distant, that didn't seem urgent, that everyone hoped was exaggerated. This is how corruption works in a democracy. Not through one dramatic betrayal, not through one evil person seizing power, but through 1,000 small refusals. Each citizen looking to their neighbor and thinking, let someone else step forward, let someone else sacrifice, let someone else tell the truth that might upset people, let someone else do the uncomfortable work. I have my own life to live. I have my own problems to deal with. Surely someone else will handle this. And so the corruption spreads, not because anyone is evil, not because anyone wants their country to fail, but because each person makes the small, understandable choice to preserve their own comfort. And democracy, which depends on citizens choosing the common good over personal ease, begins to rot from within. The rot is invisible at first. Everything seems fine. Life goes on. People go to work, come home, enjoy their families, live their lives. But underneath, the foundation is crumbling. When the bombs finally fell, there weren't enough volunteers. There weren't enough shelters. There weren't enough warning systems. There weren't enough people trained to help. And people died. Not because the nation lacked resources, not because they couldn't have prepared, but because free citizens had been unwilling to act on what they knew to be true, because each person had said, let someone else do it, because comfort had won over duty again and again in 1,000 small decisions. Now, I want to tell you about a man. His name was Stanley Baldwin. History has not been kind to him, and perhaps rightly so. But I want you to understand what happened to him, because it reveals something crucial about democratic corruption, something we need to face honestly. Baldwin was Prime Minister of Britain during this crucial period, and one day he stood before Parliament and admitted something with what he called appalling frankness. He said that from 1933 onward, he and his colleagues were worried about Germany. They saw the danger. They understood the threat, but they faced what he called the strongest pacifist feeling in the country. There had been an election where a candidate merely mentioned the need for defense, just mentioned it, and he was mobbed for it. Lost by 7,000 votes on that single issue. The people didn't want to hear about defense. They didn't want to hear about danger. They wanted to hear about peace, about prosperity, about the good times continuing. And so Baldwin made a choice. He chose not to tell the people the full truth because he feared they would reject him. He sought power by telling people what they wanted to hear rather than what they needed to know. He calculated that if he spoke too plainly about the danger, if he demanded too much sacrifice, the people would vote him out and elect someone who promised them easier times. Now, history condemns Baldwin for this, and it should. A leader's duty is to lead, not to follow public opinion over a cliff. A leader should have the courage to tell the truth even when truth is unpopular, even when truth costs them power, even when truth makes them hated. That's what leadership means. That's what moral courage demands. Baldwin failed that test, and his nation paid the price. But I ask you, and I want you to really think about this, what of the people who made such cowardice possible? What of the citizens who punished honest warnings and rewarded comfortable lies? What of the voters who said, we don't want to hear about danger, we don't want to think about sacrifice, just tell us everything will be fine? Baldwin was wrong, deeply wrong. But he was wrong because the people made honesty politically impossible. Think about this. If telling the truth meant losing power, and lying meant gaining power, What does that say about the citizens? If the person who warns you is mobbed and defeated, and the person who flatters you is elected and celebrated, what does that say about your character? Baldwin deserves blame, yes, but he does not deserve all the blame. The people who created a system where truth-telling was punished, they share the responsibility too. This is the deepest corruption. When citizens create a system where leaders cannot tell them the truth without losing power, when we punish candor and reward deception, when we shoot the messenger and embrace the flatterer, when we say we want honest leadership but we vote for whoever makes us feel good, democracy then becomes a conspiracy of comfort. Leaders lie because citizens demand lies. Citizens remain ignorant because leaders provide ignorance, and everyone blames everyone else when disaster comes. But the truth is this, and I need you to hear this clearly. In a democracy, the responsibility cannot be divided. We are all accountable. The leader who lies and the citizen who demands lies, they are both guilty. The leader who fails to warn and the citizen who punishes warnings, they are both responsible. You cannot separate them. You cannot say, it's all the politician's fault, when you're the one who elected them, who rewarded their behavior, who made their dishonesty profitable. Now, I must explain to you what corruption truly means in a democracy. And I warn you, this lesson is uncomfortable. But discomfort is the price of wisdom. If you're comfortable right now, you're probably not learning what you need to learn. The corruption that destroys free societies is not primarily the corruption of money or power. Those forms of corruption are visible. They can be investigated. They can be prosecuted. They can be punished. Someone takes a bribe, we can catch them. Someone steals from the public, we can stop them. Someone abuses their power, we can remove them. The corruption I'm describing is far more dangerous because it is invisible. It is the corruption of will, the corruption of courage, the corruption of honesty. It doesn't show up in bank accounts. It doesn't leave a paper trail. It doesn't break any laws. But it destroys democracy just as surely as any crime. It works like this, and I want you to follow this carefully because this is the heart of everything. A democracy faces a problem. The facts are clear, the experts agree, the evidence is overwhelming, but the solution requires sacrifice. Maybe higher taxes, maybe admitting we were wrong about something, maybe doing something difficult or unpopular. Leaders who tell the truth about the problem and the cost of solving it, they are punished at the polls. People don't want to hear it. They vote for someone else. They call the truth teller an alarmist, a fearmonger, someone who's too negative. Leaders who minimize the problem or promise easy solutions, they are rewarded. They win elections. They become popular. They get to keep their power. Over time, what happens? Honest leadership becomes politically impossible because any politician with common sense learns the lesson. Tell people hard truths. Lose your job. Tell people comfortable lies. Keep your job. What would you do? What would most people do? They would lie, not because they're evil, but because they're human, because they want to keep their position, because they convince themselves that they can do more good if they stay in power, even if staying in power requires some dishonesty. This is corruption in its purest form, the systematic destruction of truth-telling in public life. And here is what you must understand. This corruption cannot be fought by electing better leaders. It can only be fought by becoming better citizens, by developing the willingness to hear unpleasant truths, by demanding honesty even when honesty is hard, by supporting leaders who have the courage to tell us what we need to hear rather than what we wish to hear, by rewarding candor instead of punishing it. Democracy is built on a foundation of truth. When citizens prefer comfort over truth, the foundation crumbles, and no amount of blaming politicians will rebuild it. You can elect the most honest person in the world, but if you punish them the moment they tell you something you don't want to hear, they will either start lying or they will be replaced by someone who will. The responsibility lies with us. with you, with me, with every citizen who has the power to vote, to speak, to choose. I must tell you something about freedom that we rarely acknowledge, something that makes people uncomfortable. But it must be said, freedom is a terrible burden. In a dictatorship, the citizen can say, I am not responsible. I did not choose this leader. I cannot change this policy. I have no voice. I have no vote. I have no power. I am powerless. And there is truth in this. They bear no responsibility for what they cannot control. You cannot blame someone for failing to do something they had no ability to do. But in a democracy, you cannot hide behind such excuses. You can vote. You can speak. You can organize. You can petition. You can protest. You can run for office. You can change your leaders. You have power, real power, meaningful power, and therefore you have responsibility. This is the part we don't like to talk about. We love to talk about our rights. We love to talk about our freedoms. But we don't want to talk about the responsibilities that come with those rights, the burdens that come with that freedom. This is what makes democratic corruption so insidious. We have the freedom to choose our fate, and we bear the responsibility for the choices we make. Every choice, every vote, every time we speak or stay silent, every time we act or fail to act, all of it matters, all of it counts, all of it shapes the future. When Britain nearly fell in 1940, when they were fighting for their very survival, the people could not say a dictator forced this upon us. They had to face the truth. We chose this. We were warned. We saw the evidence. We had the power to change course, and we did not. We chose comfort. We chose ease. We chose to believe pleasant lies. And now we face the consequences. This is the burden of freedom. With the power to choose comes the weight of consequence. You cannot separate them. You cannot have one without the other. It's like wanting to drive a car but not accepting responsibility if you crash it. It's like wanting to raise a child but not accepting responsibility for how they turn out. It's like wanting to own a home but not accepting responsibility for maintaining it. Power and responsibility go together. Always. Forever. In every situation. And here is what I learned studying democracy's failures. Most people do not want this burden. They want to be free in name, but they want someone else to make the hard choices. They want democracy's benefits without democracy's costs. They want to vote, but they don't want to study the issues. They want freedom of speech, but they don't want to speak up when it's difficult. They want good government, but they don't want to participate in governing. They want leaders they can trust, but they don't want to do the work of holding leaders accountable. But it doesn't work that way. Freedom cannot be separated from responsibility. If you claim the power to govern yourself, you must accept the burden of governing wisely. If you claim the right to choose your leaders, you must accept the responsibility of choosing well. If you claim the freedom to speak, you must accept the responsibility of speaking truthfully. This is not optional. This is not something you can negotiate. This is the nature of freedom itself. This is why corruption wins. Because citizens want freedom without responsibility. They want to complain about their leaders without accepting that they chose those leaders. They want change without personal cost. They want someone else to do the hard work while they reap the benefits. They want to be free, but they don't want to pay freedom's price. But democracy cannot survive this contradiction. Either we accept both freedom and its burdens, or we will lose both. Let me tell you about democracy's most dangerous habit, the making of scapegoats. If only we had better politicians, they say. If only our leaders had more courage, more vision, more integrity. If only they weren't so corrupt, so weak, so foolish. It's always someone else's fault. It's always the people in power who failed us. We, the citizens. We're innocent. We're victims. We did nothing wrong. And there is truth in this. Leaders must be held accountable. They chose to seek power. They chose to take responsibility. They made specific decisions that had specific consequences. If those decisions were wrong, they should answer for it. I am not saying leaders are blameless, but this truth conceals a deeper lie. The lie that the people themselves bear no responsibility. I studied the fall of democracies, and I saw this pattern repeat endlessly. They support the wrong policies. They ignore the warnings. They choose comfort over security. And when disaster comes, they blame their leaders for not stopping them from making those choices. They say, "You should have known better. You should have forced us. You should have saved us from ourselves." This is corruption masquerading as accountability. Think of it this way. If your leaders can be turned out of office at any time, if they serve at your pleasure, if they must answer to you, if they need your vote to keep their power, then how can you claim they alone are responsible when things go wrong? They govern with your consent. They act with your approval. They continue because you allow them to continue. If they fail, you fail to stop them. If they lie, you fail to demand truth. If they lead the nation to disaster, you fail to choose better leaders. The truth is harder than we want to admit. In a democracy, leaders and citizens are bound together in responsibility. The leaders set the course, yes, but the citizens give or withhold permission. If the course is wrong, both must answer for it. You cannot separate them. You cannot say the captain crashed the ship when the passengers voted for him, approved his route, and cheered every decision he made right up until the crash. But we don't want to hear this. It's easier to believe that we are innocent victims of corrupt or incompetent leadership. It's more comfortable to think that all our problems would be solved if we just elected the right person. It lets us off the hook. It allows us to feel good about ourselves while everything falls apart. We can say, well, I voted for the other person. I complained. I posted on social media. I did my part. It's not my fault. This is the scapegoat deception. The belief that in a democracy, the people can be blameless while their chosen leaders fail. But let me be absolutely clear. As long as you have the power to change your government, you cannot escape responsibility for what your government becomes. Your silence is a choice. Your inaction is a choice. Your vote is a choice. Even not voting is a choice. Everything you do or fail to do shapes the outcome. And when corruption wins, it wins because citizens made a choice. Perhaps not actively, perhaps not deliberately, but through their passivity, through their unwillingness to do the hard work of citizenship, through their preference for comfort over duty. The scapegoat offers comfort but ensures catastrophe, because a people who will not accept their share of responsibility will never change their behavior. They will keep electing the same kind of leaders, keep making the same mistakes, keep wondering why nothing improves. They will keep saying, if only we had better politicians, while doing nothing to become better citizens. Responsibility cannot be outsourced. In a democracy, it comes home to every citizen. And until we accept that, until we stop looking for scapegoats and start looking in the mirror, we will never fix what's broken. Now I must speak about the most seductive form of corruption, the corruption of comfort. This corruption whispers in your ear. It sounds so reasonable. It says, don't sacrifice. Don't struggle. Someone else will handle it. Everything will work out. Why make yourself uncomfortable? Why disrupt your life? Why worry so much? Just relax. Just enjoy. Just live your life. Let other people deal with the big problem. I watched this corruption destroy Britain's preparedness in the 1930s. Time and again, the nation faced choices between comfort and security, between present ease and future safety, between pleasant lies and hard truths, time and again, they chose comfort. They could have rearmed earlier, but it would have meant higher taxes. Nobody wants higher taxes. They could have strengthened their defenses, but it would have meant sacrificing social programs. Nobody wants to cut programs that help people. They could have faced the German threat directly, but it would have meant risking war while they still hoped for peace. Nobody wants war. Each choice seemed reasonable in isolation. Why raise taxes when maybe the danger isn't as bad as people say? Why cut programs when people are suffering now for a threat that might never come? Why prepare for war when maybe, just maybe, we can avoid it? Each sacrifice seemed too costly. Each warning seemed alarmist. Each person who said we need to act now, they seemed too negative, too pessimistic, too focused on the worst-case scenario. But the comfort they chose in 1935 bought them catastrophe in 1940. The money they saved on defense spending, they spent 10 times over on the war. The programs they preserved, they had to abandon anyway when the bombs fell. The peace they hoped for, they lost it all the same, but from a position of terrible weakness instead of strength. Every comfortable choice they made, it came back to haunt them with interest. And here is what you must understand. This same corruption threatens every democracy in every age, including yours, because comfort is always more attractive than sacrifice. Present ease always seems wiser than future security, and the cost of action always seems higher than the cost of inaction until suddenly it isn't. Until the bill comes due. Until the catastrophe you hope to avoid arrives anyway, but now you're unprepared. This corruption is especially dangerous because it appeals to our better nature. It says, care for the poor, don't neglect education, maintain social programs, take care of people who are suffering now. Why spend money on weapons that might never be used? Why prepare for dangers that might never come? Why sacrifice today for a tomorrow that might be fine? These are not ignoble thoughts. These are not evil arguments. They sound compassionate. They sound wise. They sound like the words of good people who care about others. But they become corrupt when they prevent us from facing genuine threats. When they become excuses for avoiding hard truths. When they turn into a blanket justification for never preparing, never sacrificing, never choosing security over comfort. The question is never comfort or security. The question is never helping people or preparing for danger. The question is always, how do we balance both? How do we care for people now while also protecting them from future threats? But that balance requires honesty about threats. It requires willingness to sacrifice when necessary. The corruption of comfort promises that we can have security without sacrifice, prosperity without risk, freedom without cost. It is the most persistent lie in human history. Every generation falls for it. Every nation believes that somehow, this time, it will be different. Somehow we can get everything we want without paying the price. Somehow we can stay safe without being strong. Somehow we can preserve freedom without defending it. And every democracy that falls because its citizens believed this lie. Now we come to what you must actually do, because understanding without action is just another form of corruption. The corruption of knowing what's right but failing to do it. The corruption of agreeing with good ideas but never putting them into practice. The corruption of feeling inspired for a moment but returning to the same old patterns. I have given you truth tonight. Now I must give you action. Now I must tell you what to do with this truth. Every evening, before you sleep, I want you to ask yourself 3 questions. Write them down if you must. Keep them on your phone. Put them on a card by your bed. But ask them honestly. Not as a performance, not as something to check off a list, but as a genuine examination of your conscience. First, what hard truth? did I avoid today? Did you see something wrong and stay silent? Did you know the right action but choose the easy one? Did you let comfort win over conscience? Did someone ask your opinion and you told them what they wanted to hear instead of what they needed to know? Did you see injustice and look away? Did you know you should speak up but convinced yourself it wasn't your place? Be specific. Name the moment. Face it honestly. Second, what did I demand from my leaders today? Honesty or flattery? When you listened to the news, read an article, heard a speech, what did you respond to? Did you reward truth-telling or comfortable lies? Did you share something because it was true or because it made you feel good? Did you dismiss someone because they said something hard to hear, or did you consider whether they might be right? This is crucial, because every time you reward dishonesty with your attention, your approval, your vote, you make honesty less possible. Third, what did I do today to strengthen democracy? Did you inform yourself accurately? Did you engage respectfully with someone who sees things differently? Did you fulfill any civic duty, however small? Did you help your community? Did you stand up for what's right? Did you do anything at all, that made your democracy a little bit stronger? Or did you just complain, consume, and criticize? These questions sound simple. They are not, because honest answers require confronting the gap between what we believe about ourselves and how we actually behave. We all think we're good people. We all think we're doing enough. We all think we would be brave in the big moments. But these questions force us to face the truth. They make us look at the small moments, the daily choices, the quiet compromises, and that's where character really lives. This daily examination is how you fight corruption in its earliest stage in your own heart, because the corruption that destroys nations begins with individual compromises. One person choosing comfort over duty, one person staying silent when they should speak, one person looking away when they should look closely, and it is defeated by individual integrity, practiced daily. One person telling the truth, one person doing their duty, one person choosing courage. Do not wait for the crisis. Do not tell yourself you will be courageous when courage truly matters. That is a fantasy. Character is not something you turn on when you need it. Character is built in small moments, forged through daily choices, strengthened through constant practice. The person you are today is the person you will be when the crisis comes. If you compromise when it's easy, you will compromise when it's hard. If you choose comfort over duty in small things, you will choose comfort over duty in big things. The democracy you want begins with the person you become. Second, you must make a commitment to truth-telling, even when truth-telling costs you something. This means when someone asks your opinion, give it honestly, even if honesty is unpopular. When you see a problem, name it clearly, even if doing so creates conflict. When you're wrong, admit it, even though pride resists. When you don't know something, say so, even though people expect you to have answers. But I must warn you, truth-telling in a democracy is dangerous. Not physically dangerous, as it is under tyranny. Nobody will arrest you. Nobody will harm you. But socially dangerous, people will not like it. You will be called alarmist, divisive, negative, too intense, too serious, someone who brings everyone down. People will prefer those who tell them what they want to hear, who make them feel good, who never challenge them. This is why corruption wins, because truth-tellers pay a price, and most people are unwilling to pay it. They try it once or twice. People react badly. Friends become distant. Family members get annoyed. Co-workers avoid them. And they think, this isn't worth it. I'll just keep my mouth shut. I'll just go along. I'll just let other people deal with it. But here is what you must understand. If you will not tell the truth when it costs you something, You do not value truth. You value your own comfort. You value being liked more than being honest. You value peace more than integrity. Because democracy depends on citizens who will speak truth to power, who will challenge each other, who will refuse to accept comfortable lies, even when truth is painful. So commit to this. Be the person who tells the truth, kindly but clearly. Be the citizen who supports leaders brave enough to deliver bad news. Be the voice that says we have a problem even when everyone else wants to pretend otherwise. Be the one who asks hard questions. Be the one who challenges assumptions. Be the one who demands evidence. Be the one who refuses to go along just to get along. This will not make you popular. But popularity was never the point. The point is integrity. The point is responsibility. The point is ensuring that when the crisis comes, as it always does, your democracy has enough truth tellers to navigate it. One person speaking truth can awaken 1,000, but it requires the first person to speak. Will that person be you? Or will you wait for someone else? Will you demand truth from your leaders while refusing to speak it yourself? Will you criticize politicians for lying while you lie in your own small ways? Third, you must choose to bear burdens you do not have to bear. In Britain's crisis, they needed volunteers, simple volunteers, people willing to prepare for disaster they hoped would never come. Most people said, let someone else do it. I have my own concerns. I'm busy. I'm tired. Other people have more time. Other people are better qualified. Someone will handle it. And so when disaster came, there weren't enough volunteers. There weren't enough trained people. There weren't enough prepared citizens, and people suffered because of it. You live in a democracy, which means problems are solved by citizens who choose to solve them, not because they must, not because someone forces them, not because it's their job, but because they recognize that in a free society, someone must step forward. And today, that someone is them. Here is your practice. Look at your community. Look at your nation. Find one problem, just one, where your action could make a difference. Not a problem you can solve alone, but a problem where you can contribute. Then contribute, volunteer, organize, donate, advocate, serve, run for office, attend meetings, speak up, show up. Whatever your community needs, whatever your skills allow, whatever your time permits, do something. Stop watching from the sidelines. Stop complaining that nobody's doing anything. Stop waiting for someone else to fix it. Be the someone. I don't care what you choose. I care that you choose something, because democracy is not a spectator sport. It is not something that happens to you. It is something you make happen through daily choices to bear burdens you could ignore. And here is what I promise you. If you do this, if you genuinely commit to bearing democratic burdens, you will find meaning that comfort never provides. You will discover that the weight of responsibility is lighter than the emptiness of passivity. You will learn that doing something, even something small, is more satisfying than doing nothing. You will find that contributing to something larger than yourself gives your life purpose that no amount of personal comfort can match. Because we are made for something more than comfort. We are made for purpose, for contribution, for leaving the world better than we found it. That is what my great-grandfather understood when he left Ireland. He didn't leave for comfort. He left for opportunity to build, to contribute, to be part of something greater. That is what every immigrant who built this nation understood. That is what every generation that preserved democracy understood. It is bought by citizens willing to pay its price every day in small acts of courage and responsibility. Let me bring this to a close by returning to where we began. The test of this moment is the simple test of honesty. Not just political honesty, though we desperately need that, but your honesty, my honesty, the willingness of free people to face hard truths and act upon them. Corruption wins when good people choose comfort over truth. When citizens demand pleasant lies instead of hard facts. When we blame our leaders for choices we enabled through our silence and inaction. But corruption loses when even one person says, "Not me, not today. I will not look away. I will not choose comfort over truth. I will not surrender my responsibility as a free citizen." It starts with one person, then another, then another. It spreads person by person, choice by choice, day by day, until enough citizens have chosen integrity over comfort, truth over lies, duty over ease. And when enough citizens make that choice, democracy survives. When too few make that choice, democracy falls. You have heard tonight what I believe with all my conviction, that democracy survives or falls based on the daily choices of ordinary citizens. That the corruption we must fight first is in our own hearts, in our preference for comfort over duty, for pleasant lies over hard truths, for blaming others over accepting our own responsibility. I have shown you the cost of democratic corruption. I have shown you how it destroyed nations. I have taken you to Britain in the 1930s and showed you exactly how good people, given accurate information, chose comfort and nearly destroyed themselves. And I have shown you how to fight it. Not with grand gestures, but with daily integrity. Not with one big action, but with consistent small choices. Examine yourself honestly every day. Tell the truth, even when it costs you. Bear burdens you don't have to bear. These three practices, simple but difficult, are how you prevent corruption from winning, how you strengthen democracy, how you become the kind of citizen that free society needs. Now the choice is yours. You can close this and return to comfort. You can continue to blame others for problems you have the power to address. You can wait for someone else to fix what needs fixing. You can keep saying, "What difference can one person make?" You can keep choosing ease over duty, comfort over truth, passivity over action. And if you make that choice, I cannot stop you. Nobody can force you to be a good citizen. That's what freedom means. Or you can accept this truth. Your daily choices, to seek truth, to speak honestly, to bear your share of the burden, these choices determine whether democracy survives or falls. Not just in some abstract way, but actually, really, in the most concrete sense possible. Every time you choose integrity over comfort, you make democracy stronger. Every time you choose comfort over integrity, you make democracy weaker. It is that simple and that serious. I leave you with this affirmation, which I have lived by and which I hope will guide you. The rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. And the preservation of those rights depends not on the virtue of our leaders, but on the courage of free citizens who refuse to let corruption win. Your rights come from something higher than government, but keeping those rights, protecting those rights, passing those rights to the next generation, that depends on you, on your choices, on your courage, on your integrity. The question is not whether your voice matters. It does. The question is not whether your actions make a difference. They do. Every voice matters. Every action counts. Every choice shapes the future. The question is simply this: what will you choose? Will you choose comfort or duty? Will you choose pleasant lies or hard truths? Will you choose to complain or to contribute? Will you choose to be a passive spectator or an active citizen? If this message has stirred something in you, if you hear the call to be more than a passive spectator, then subscribe to this channel. Not for my sake, for yours. Let it be a symbol of your commitment to the kind of citizenship democracy requires. Let it be a reminder every time you see it that you made a choice to engage, to learn, to grow, to be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. Like this if it challenged you, even if it made you uncomfortable, especially if it made you uncomfortable. Because discomfort is where growth begins. Comfort is where corruption takes root. If everything I said made you feel good, I probably failed. If some of it challenged you, made you question yourself, made you uncomfortable, then perhaps I succeeded. Perhaps you heard something you needed to hear. And most importantly, comment below with one choice you will make differently, one burden you will bear, one truth you will tell, not a grand promise, not a big declaration, but a small commitment. Something specific, something you will actually do. Say, I will ask myself those 3 questions every night for the next week. Or say, I will volunteer 1 hour this month in my community. Or say, I will speak up the next time I see something wrong instead of staying silent. Make it real, make it concrete, make it something you can actually do. Because the battle against corruption begins not with what others do, but with what you choose today. Not tomorrow, not someday, today, right now, in this moment, what will you choose? Do not let corruption win. Choose courage. Choose truth. Choose responsibility. The future of democracy, your democracy, depends on nothing less. And I believe you can do this. I believe you will do this. I believe that in you and in citizens like you lies the hope of preserving what so many have sacrificed to build this democratic experiment, this grand test of whether people can truly govern themselves. It continues or ends based on your choices. Choose well.